sanctions imposed in protest over Gbagbo's refusal to stand down are already strangling the nation's cocoa sector. More than 475,000 tons are stuck in storage. If cocoa production continues to suffer, then not only will farmers face financial ruin, it will soon become a major concern too for chocolate lovers everywhere. Mohamed Ado, AlJazeera, Ara in Eastern Côte d'Ivoire.
Well, you're watching Al Jazeera. Let's quickly recap our top stories now. The son of Libya's leader is warning rebel fighters the time has come for a full-scale military assault. Foreign ministers from Arab Gulf states have joined mounting international pressure against the Libyan regime. They say Gaddafi's government has lost its legitimacy. Well, their statement follows NATO and the EU agreeing to send warships closer to the Libyan coast, and French President Nicolas Sarkozy has recognized the Opposition National Council as the rightful government in Libya. And Libyan government forces are continuing their assault on rebel positions in the oil regions of Ras Lanouf and Brega. A witness tells Al Jazeera troops have been deployed to the area by sea. We're joined now by Tariq Youssef from the Dubai School of Government. Always good to have you on. What's going on, first of all, in the ground now? Are the rebels losing ground militarily?
Possibly, and not unexpectedly. I think they've been pounded in the last 72 hours heavily by air attacks, mortar attacks, and even sea attacks today.
Can they survive?
They probably can survive and retreat back. They're a couple of hundred kilometers away from the eastern city of Benghazi. They can probably pull back a bit towards Brega, Jdabia, and hold their ground. But with continued air bombardment and promises of a bigger onslaught in the next couple of days by SAFE tonight, and suggestions by the U.S. Director of Intelligence that, in fact, Gaddafi is preparing for the duration, for a long-haul fight, there are serious worries about the ability of a disorganized and a largely informal rebel group to...
Where does that leave some of the rebel pockets in the west, like a Zawiya, which seems to be being traded back and forth?
In a very difficult situation. A couple of these cities, big cities like Misrata and Zawiya, are essentially blockaded. Their ability to keep the flow of medical equipment, food supplies, essential other areas of logistical support are extremely limited, and it only becomes a matter of time under heavy bombardment before a humanitarian crisis will develop in Libya's third and fourth largest city.
If the US Director of National Intelligence is now saying he thinks Gaddafi will prevail, well, what does that mean? Do you think the US and other powers might be a little less likely to get involved to help them?
Possibly. That scenario suggested by James Clapper today assumes that even with a no-fly zone, and with all the sanctions that have been imposed and the political isolation and with a potential humanitarian crisis and with Tripoli essentially shut down as a thriving, vibrant city, the regime can still prevail and mount attacks for the long haul. I don't believe that scenario to be the case. I think for the moment the regime can prevail, and it will take the US and its allies perhaps imposing a no-fly zone and further isolating the regime and putting pressure on it to collapse from within.
Is it likely we're going to get UN action now? We've had the statement from the GCC, of course. I think there are other meetings scheduled to go on in the next few days. The EU, the Arab League, the African Union. If we get similar strong lines of support for the rebels or anti-government statements, will that make a difference in the UN?
I think it will make a very big difference, barring any surprises.
How will it help with Russia and China's position, though?
Exactly, barring any surprises from China or Russia. And I think Russia and China are likely to support this because this is not a battle, not a perceived battle between the Western world and some Arab government. This is between the people of the region, people of Libya in this particular case, who have called for UN support, for a UN-imposed no-fly zone, and the international community. I think that resolution will pass through, especially now with broad regional support coming both from the GCC, very importantly, and perhaps on Saturday from the Arab League. There is a consensus for a no-fly zone, and that seems to be the minimal at this point, especially given Saif al-Islam's promise tonight that Libya's military is going to be unleashing hell on the rebels in the next couple of days.
All right, Tariq Youssef, thanks for your thoughts on that. A hearing at the US House of Representatives has led to accusations of witch hunts and Islamophobia against American Muslims. Let's go back to Jane, who's following that story on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. Jane, a controversial story that just goes on.
It certainly is a controversial story, and as you can see, the halls behind me are empty. That wasn't the case a couple of hours ago. There were literally hundreds of people from the US public who are here to find out what's going to happen in this controversial case. There were those who supported it and those who were against it. It took 4 grueling hours to conclude. There was some political bickering between Democrats and Republicans, but Peter King, the man who was chairing this, told us that it was a success. He believes that he has proved that American Muslims are getting increasingly radicalized through mosques, and also that Muslim communities are not doing enough to put a stop to this and not doing enough to help police. Now, this kind of investigation has been done before. The difference this time, though, is that he focused purely on Muslims here in America, and also the fact that he's known for being an ardent supporter of the IRA, a group that killed innocent people in the past, including an American. But Peter King says that what he's doing is good for the country. It's going to be making the country even more safe than it is. And he said that what he's done is certainly not un-American.
There is nothing radical or un-American in holding these hearings. Indeed, congressional investigation of Muslim American radicalization is the logical response to the repeated and urgent warnings which the Obama administration has been making in recent months.
Now, the first Muslim ever to make it into Congress was on the opposite end of the scale. Keith Ellison said that what he is doing is bad for Muslims, and that if anything, it's going to make this country a lot less safe. He also got very emotional. These were his thoughts.
We need to conduct a thorough, fair analysis and to do no harm. The approach of today's hearing, I fear, does not meet these standards. Today's hearing is entitled "The Extent of Radicalization of the American Muslim Community and That Community's Response." It's true that specific individuals, including some who are Muslims, are violent extremists. However, these are individuals, not entire communities.
Now, the man who was known as the star witness for Peter King was also very buoyed by the results. He believes, though, Dr. Jassa, that more research needs to be done.
Well, I think ultimately the reform starts by getting the ideas of Jeffersonian democracy, the separation of church and state, into the Muslim consciousness. Right now, it's not compatible with the concept of political Islam and the Islamic State.
So are you suggesting investigating the religion?
No, I as a Muslim am suggesting that I want to have books that I can give to my children, websites I can tell them to go to, that give them an interpretation of Sharia and of Islam and of Quran and Hadith that aren't in conflict with a society that separates church and state. Right now, I don't believe that it's there. I believe that terrorism is simply one symptom of an